Okay, with this video I'm just going to finalize what might be done with the smoke map here and the boost map, because in the previous three videos I talked about arriving at suitable values, but I didn't talk about what you did with the final map once you decided you'd got suitable values. Now, first of all, I'll just look at the smoke map. Now, when we'd finished playing with the smoke map on a previous video, I'd suggested that we'd got a 20% increase across the board here, and I did explain that it was up to you whether you took the whole 20% increase across the board or whether you took parts of it, as in just this corner area over here, which is usually the main active part of the map. But the thing that we didn't change, because we needed to go to the boost map to find out what to change and how to change, so the thing we didn't change was this value here on the axis. So we didn't know for sure what to do with these axes. Now these all need shifting along in effect, because these axes are probably okay still, but not in the position that they're currently in. So in other words, if we were to let's say cut that bit out, and then we'll do away with the 300, so in there we'll put paste. Now I've got that sort of value in with 350. Now with a little bit of luck I'd still be close enough to be okay. It's debatable because I had 22.9 there and now I've got 25. It's possible I might need to shift these a little bit further this way, but I'm guessing that because this was good enough for 60, that I'm guessing that we might just about get away with this okay here. I'm guessing that this might just about be okay. It might not be. We might find that we need a different amount of air to be allowed for here, because this is a little bit too high at this point. But it's debatable, because we may not use that point in the map, because during driving we may come across here more or less and we may not use that point very much. So it's difficult to say in advance. If you want to err on the side of caution, the simplest thing to do would be to reduce these to 60 and don't have that peak. And you might want to reduce some of the others on the same basis. You might look at them and say, well, what I want them to be is a little bit closer to some of the values in here. But if you hadn't copied the whole map over, it wouldn't matter, obviously. Right. Let's assume, though, that we're going to accept that as it is. So I'm going to assume I'm going to accept that as it is. So when I copy this across, I will need the axes and the data, because this 300 is going to disappear. This new number was the one that we worked out. Remember, we decided that we would use, I'll just quickly recap over that, we would use 70 and 18.1, and so we want that one to be that number times that number, and we decided it would come out somewhere around about 1267, and then we went looking at 1267 and what boost that was going to require. We may not need 1267. I mean, maybe 1250 will be close enough. And again, at this point, it's up to you to decide, do I want to err on the side of caution, or do I want to take my best guess, or whatever. I mean, you could literally put in there 1267. I mean, look, they've used 503 there. There is nothing stopping you from just putting in there 1267. Now, I'm just going to put in there 1270. So that's what I'm going to put in there. So I'm going to go from 1050 to 1270. Now, it is possible that you might want to consider changing these so that these were increased slightly and you had a different number perhaps in here, and then keeping these 63s instead of reducing them if you thought you had a problem. You're not likely to do very much damage to the car by making these changes, so all you're likely to do is get smoke when you don't want smoke. So you can come back and make slight changes to any of these values to reduce smoke, because the only thing you're really concerned about is running ridiculously lean, which you are not going to. So the obvious thing is that you may run a little bit rich and get too much black smoke. And this is again where anybody doing tuning and having a rolling road there, they can make these changes on the fly, and they can see exactly what's going on, and they can measure how much power they're getting, and they can look at the exhaust and measure the temperature and measure the amount of smoke coming out. So obviously the professionals are going to win hands down every time, compared to somebody who's doing this and then driving their car and then coming back and perhaps thinking, well, what shall I do now? Right, now having got that far then, and again I'm just going to get rid of these bits that clutter everything up, because so we know that that's what we were talking about. Now we've got then a map that might be suitable as a smoke map. So having got that far, we would then copy this map into that map, except that we wouldn't do it in Excel. We would take all of this to Windows and copy it into Windows. Windows is quite happy for you to do that. There is nothing stopping you from copying and pasting from Excel straight into Windows. The only time it may get unhappy is if you've got calculations that run in the background of these figures. In other words, if you've done it like this and then you've got that there as B73 times 1.2, if you copy and paste this into Windows, every now and again I find that it's not happy about something or other, presumably because of the way that the formatting is being used in the background by Excel. But if that is the case, then obviously you will have to redo these numbers without any background formatting, so that you've just got basic numbers and nothing else. So if you do go to copy and paste and the whole thing doesn't really work properly, or something odd happens, consider that you might need to come back here and redo this. I won't go into how you can redo that. I'm going to read the help files in Excel. Okay, now if we go then on to the boost, because obviously the two are so intricately linked that you've got to really consider both at the same time. If we go back to boost, or move on to boost, then we've got the same situation with boost. Now there's something I need to mention about this at the end if I remember, but we could do a very similar thing here, except I haven't got the extra file or the extra map here because I just did that little bit. But what we could do here is we could take all of this chunk, and again remember what I'm saying here is you can take just what you think is going to be the most active area and change that on just the most active column, or you can make a big change in one lump. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that piece out, and I'm going to move the whole thing across one column and paste it again. And so now I've got exactly what I had before. So it's the same thing that I had before, but I've got an empty space. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that one, and I'm going to drop it into there. Obviously I don't need to do it like that. I can just say drop into there. This is no different than having the whole map here and taking the whole thing across, but I'm just going to do that little bit at the moment so you can see what I'm talking about. And it now goes 45, 50, 70. It's quite a big jump, but I'm going to assume that the ECU can manage to do its calculations there. And we've already looked excuse me, we've already looked at this and played around with changes to do with the boost limiter, sorry, this one. So we've already got an alternative boost limiter that we can put into the map there, and we've got an alternative maximum value for the boost limit, so our single value boost limit. So we've got that there, and now we've got a new shape boost map that we can put into Windows. So we can copy and paste this and we can put it into Windows. Now you can't do the changes to your smoke map without the turbo map. So you need to make sure that if you're changing the fueling, you do the smoke map and the turbo map together. They must be done together. And of course you can't make changes to the turbo map if you don't change the two limits, because if you do that, all that's going to happen is you're going to drop straight into limp mode. Well, now one final comment that I haven't made, but I need to get everybody to bear in mind, is that when you are moving chunks of this around, the way I've done it is by getting rid of the first column. Now you may, and I stress may, but you may occasionally come unstuck with that. Every now and again I find that a file doesn't want to lose its first column and doesn't like starting on a new column. In other words, it doesn't like starting at 5. It wanted to start at 0. And I can't find any logical reason for that, because sometimes it happens and other times it doesn't happen. But if you make a change like this and you discover that something is odd, or the car is it's not behaving the way you want it to, simply go back to the original file straight away and go use the original file, and then come back here and consider taking out one of these instead. So in other words, if it went 0, 5, 10, leave the 0 in and perhaps take out 5 and then move them all across. So if something odd happens like that, just consider altering something and using a different column as the one you've removed. 9 times out of 10, taking the first one out doesn't make any difference, but every now and again I've come across odd times when it seems that the file doesn't like that first one being missing. Right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop there, because we've only got the torque map to go now, so I'm going to stop there, and the next one I will look at is the torque map.